Great news, everybody. So a lot of Thrive events have been happening over the last few years, and there's been a couple Thrive for Women conferences. Now, other than this one, I'm not aware of a Thrive for Men's concert. But finally, our day is here, gentlemen. Well, I mean, it already passed, but I assume that means there's going to be more Thrive for Men conventions. Anyway, let's check this out. I got to show you. Oh, I'm so excited. So here we go. Thrive Day for Men, featuring Chad Summer. Okay, you can go learn from Chad Summer. TikTok, spelled with a C apparently, influencer and comedian, awesome, poking his eyes out, it's terrifying, but awesome. We got this guy, national speaker, cool beans. We got, this dude, ketamine and psilocybin interventional therapist, holy shit, yes, count me in. Oh, you can learn about men's health, awesome. And then over here, what's she gonna teach you? She's gonna teach you about, oh my god, oh my god. All right, well, we're back again with another one of these John Dehlin videos. Swear to God, this whole channel is not going to be about John Dehlin. It's just sort of an easy and convenient springboard. I should have my friend on next time. I'm going to talk about wokeness in certain art. Because believe it or not, a lot of art is getting maybe a little bit woke. You might have noticed. Anyway, so in this one, I wanted to talk about the very last straw I had in my defense of John Dehlin, and that was very recent, last month, in fact, the Rod Meldrum interview. Now, for anybody who doesn't know who Rod Meldrum is, he's a Mormon apologist, and he is the founder of the Heartland Theory for the Book of Mormon. Now, what the Heartland Theory is, basically he believes that the Book of Mormon is a literal historical text that took place in North America, and I'm pretty sure exclusively in North America. Now, if you want a good summary of the Heartland model, I would suggest going and listening to Rod Meldrum's interview on Mormon Book Reviews, because Steve, I can never remember his last name, Heineke, is a fantastic interviewer. And as the title of this suggests, I believe that John Dehlin puts ideology above objectivity, which is not a good move for an interviewer. Steve doesn't. Steve will ask questions and people will respond. His guests will respond in ways that he clearly doesn't agree with, or maybe won't agree with. You never know, because he's pretty objective as an interviewer. He'll ask probing questions and he'll clarify, but he doesn't preach like John and Carah do. Now, I listened to this one, and it was the first time I had listened to Mormon Stories in a long time. And the reason I listened to it was because I was excited. I always loved the apologist episodes of Mormon Stories because they're always kind of nutty. I always tell everybody my favorite one is Brian Hales, because he knows a lot of shit and he comes to the most batshit insane conclusions about the stuff that he knows. Now, this guy has this idea that the entire Book of Mormon, with huge civilizations, huge battles, like, took place in North America that we just don't have any evidence for. And he claims there's evidence, but anyway, I was excited to hear about that. And you can hear about it on the Mormon Stories interview. But first, you have to wade through about, 5-6 hours worth of John and Carah grandstanding and moralizing to this grown-ass man, explaining to him the error of his ways, and solving racism, which is something they did. Anyway, I'm going to jump into this. Now, this first clip is fairly short and fairly innocuous, but it sort of illustrates my point of the death of John Dehlin's objectivity.
Western cultures, the rise of European cultures in terms of power and influence over the darker skinned civilizations, for a number of reasons you can read about in Guns, Germs, and Steel with Jaron Diamond or other books like that. Like, you've already allowed for Mormon prophets, seers, and revelators to be wrong. And you've even said just now that in the Book of Mormon, personal biases can enter into what the prophets write in Scripture, such that we can't always rely on a literal interpretation of either the Book of Mormon or the Bible, because sometimes personal biases
carries. I mean, just because the Book of Mormon was written by the Nephites, I mean, yes, they're going to have a bias.
Okay,
they're going to have a bias against the Lamanites.
But see, that's where
they're perennial enemies.
this is where
Yeah.
Carah's, question earlier really comes into play. If we go with Occam's razor,
Yeah.
the simplest explanation, where I was hoping you would go, would
Yeah.
be to say that the history of humankind has been colonization, war, and subjugation. And in the past 500 to 600 years, it's been the dominance of Western cultures, the rise of European cultures in terms of power and influence over the darker skinned.
Now that's always good because John has to get his post-colonial guilt out of the way. Let everybody know. No, I know the white people are bad. But did you catch that? Where I was hoping you would go with this. So there's a hell of an interviewer for you. Somebody who will ask their interviewee a question, and when he answers that question, and I'm not going to go through the whole question. You can look at this, look at the timestamp if you want, and get some more context. But ask him a question, and then when he answers the question, say, well, I was actually wanting you to answer it this way, which is funny because he spends the rest of the interview insisting that he's not trying to trap Rod, which, Rod knows he's trying to trap him. He's basically trying to get him to say for a large portion of this interview, either Brigham Young was racist and therefore not a prophet, or I am racist. It's ideology over objectivity, always with this guy now. And here's where you get a little bit into that. This part, this part's where John basically tells him to call Brigham Young a racist, which I've heard a lot of people say that Dehlin wonders why he can't get faithful Mormon people on Mormon stories more often, because he did in one of his John Larson interviews lately said that like Terrell and Fiona Givens and Richard Bushman will say things like, you've changed, your tone has changed. And John Larson, of course, called them cowards because he's John Larson. But the thing is, he has changed. He's changed a lot. He's wondering why he can't get these faithful Mormon apologists or the faithful Mormon members on Mormon stories. And it's because of this. Like, who wants to sit through? They did like 7 or 8 hours, and I'd say a good 4 of those hours were Rod being chastised. And the dude took it like a champ. Granted, I'm a little partial to him because he sounds to me exactly like Del Gribble.
Teachings and behaviors of Brigham Young is racist?
I guess I'd have to say I don't know.
Is it because you're uncomfortable calling one of the Lord's anointed racist?
I would be definitely uncomfortable with that. Okay. But on the other hand,
no shit, John. This guy you think talks to God, would you be uncomfortable saying that he's the worst thing you can possibly be in our current our current political climate? Yeah, no, I'd be a little uncomfortable with that. Okay. Please, John, have a Muslim on and ask them if you'd be okay with them calling Muhammad a pedophile. Oh my God, I did not mean to do this. I swear to God, I did not mean to pause this on a freeze frame of Rod's face. Oof, sorry, Rod. Anyway, this is a great clip. It's where Dehlin really starts moralizing, really starts condescending to him, because he has up to this point already, but most of it is just trying to trap Rod into, as I said, either saying Brigham Young is racist or saying I'm a racist. But this is where he really starts chastising him like a fucking child.
Argument. And if you take a look at throughout all of history and you add in the Asiatic people and
okay, but I'm just trying to say something very simple, which is over the past 500 years, white men of European descent
here in America
and in Europe and elsewhere have wreaked
not in China, not in Africa.
I'm saying that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
that men
in a specific area,
men of European descent,
right?
You're super ruining the narrative I'm trying to say. Okay, I'm trying to hone in on this hyper specific place and time where white people do all the wrong things. Rod's pretty good at catching on that. And John was probably just insufferable as a Mormon. I've got to believe that. Side note, if John Goodman and Charlie Kirk had a baby, it would be John Dehlin.
have wreaked genocidal havoc and untold brutality and genocide on generations of people of darker skin colors, and that's a horrible and an awful thing.
Absolutely.
And to then just say, well, there needs to be opposition in all things and God's ways are higher than our ways, doesn't reflect our as white men of European descent, our adequate reflection on the brutality and the severity and the awfulness of what we've sort of done.
Okay, but John
is one of the good whites. Okay, just in case anybody was wondering, he's done adequate reflection, and he has paid penance for his part, and continues to pay penance on his part. So, I'm almost thinking this is exactly why he brought Rod Meldrum on there, because he just thought he could handle this hours and hours, and he was right. Hours and hours of just being belittled and being called a racist. Now, this is something that they try to do. These post-colonial theorists try to do all the time, which is to make the atrocities. They take all the atrocities committed by America, which there are a ton, and they try to make them seem unique, like specifically American. And they're just not. And Rod even tries to bring that up. At one point, he tries to bring up Genghis Khan, who committed terrible things, and John just calls it a deflection. It's these things can only apply to this specific thing that I want. And if you say, well, it also applies here and here and here, and he's, oh, you're deflecting. Why can't you just apologize? Why can't you just bow your head and say yes? This needs to be a movie, and this needs to freeze frame right here, right when Rod is in the middle of talking to John, right when he's in the middle of being chastised about racism and trying to defend his beliefs and stuff. And it just needs to freeze frame and have that classic, I bet you're wondering how I got here. Because this makes no sense. Like, I wouldn't even have predicted this. With the little faith I have in John Dehlin as an interviewer, I would not have assumed that this discussion on this wacky batshit heartland theory would have gone to a point where for hours upon hours they're talking about. And the chapter is titled "Deflection When Answering the Racist Male Privilege Question." Come on, man. Now, of course, no dissection of Mormon stories wokeness would be complete without, a little bit of Carah moralizing as well. So let's get a little bit of this. This isn't actually part 3 of Rod's interview, and you can see it's 6 fucking hours long. And she's about to explain why. Just watch.
Believes it,
I believe that he believes it, and I used to believe that with all of my heart. I believed that the fruits of the gospel were true, and they did all of the same things that you said. And I had to recognize that I'm saying that as a person who's white, who's never had to deal with racist people in the church. And so I started listening to what Black members of the church had to say and other people.
I started listening to what Black people had to say. Okay, I can't believe I have to say this. It's current year, and I have to explain to somebody who claims to be an anti-racist that Black people are not a fucking monolith. Like, I don't know how these woke scoldy people get into this, get into their heads that like all Black people just hold the same opinions on everything. It's like they're legitimately white supremacists, because the only group of people who to them are not a monolith, other than being a monolithic oppression, are white people. And Black people, if they don't have the correct opinions, the Black opinions, then they ain't Black. So no, Carah, you haven't talked to all the Black Mormons and show me the statistics on which ones believe that the church is racist. And what do we got here? These chapter heads are great. I swear to God, John oversees the naming of the chapter. Ooh, call that one John bravely stands up against transphobia. Yeah. Rub that fucking woke lotion all over my face. This one's great. John reprimand for Rod's LGBTQ comments. Alrighty, let's watch that, because fucking why not?
By those comparisons. And we don't have time to go into the LGBT thing with you. And I honestly don't
Right.
think that's your specialty.
It is
I
my
don't think
specialty.
you probably know a lot about that. So, but I do have to represent, there's several viewers and listeners that were deeply hurt and offended by that. And I just want to acknowledge that.
And I apologize if I've hurt somebody's feelings about my thoughts there.
Well, I would
And here we go. Here's the part where, I mean, apologies aren't acceptable. Because if you just accepted an apology, because he's not going to change his mind. That's the only apology that's acceptable, is if you change your mind. You say, well, okay, why don't you stop believing the things that you believe? And so he apologized. I said, oh, sorry if I offended anyone. That's just my views. And then John obviously doesn't accept it. And plus, if he accepted it, then he wouldn't be able to further chastise Rod, which is just such an ego stroke for this guy at this point. The chat is going nuts.
say, more than apologizing at hurting people's feelings, I would say, Rod, my recommendation is talk to more LGBT people and read more LGBT research to understand that it doesn't belong to be compared to bestiality or
Yeah. I have actually done quite a bit
or
of research
pedophilia,
involving
but
some of that stuff, but yeah.
well, I know what you mean by
And
doing
it
research.
shows she
I know what you mean by doing research. My God, I can't tell you how much this just mirrors the Mormon experience, but like in a more forceful manner. Because this ideology, like at least with Mormonism, their ideology like prohibits them from being actively aggressive. It's all passive aggression. At least it, convinces them to just kind of backhandedly be a dick to you as you're walking away from it. But this new ideology, the woke ideology, well, you're supposed to be a dick. In fact, if you're not enough of a dick to the people who deserve it, who need penance, then you are also in need of penance. And the best part is when he tells him, oh, you have done a lot of research. I was like, well, I know what you mean by research. You've been reading anti-Mormon, anti-me material, anti-woke material. Now on to my favorite and final part of the entire Rod Meldrum interview, and that is where John Dehlin decides to stop it in the middle and just straight up denounce racism. That's actually what the chapter heading is called, is John denounces racism.
Complete agreement. All of us are in agreement that God loves every single one of his children here. Period.
And how about we all denounce racism in any form, past, present, or future?
Yeah.
Yeah. Carah?
I love that. Oh my God. Carrie gives him the most like patronizing thumbs up. I mean, I'm sure she's tired at this point, but Rod gives the liberal individualist answer, which is God loves all of his children, or everyone is created equal, which is in itself a denunciation of racism. But then you get,
whenever we take a moment to just denounce racism in all of its forms. Racism is super bad and super harmful. And I, John Dehlin, am one of the good whites, and I don't like racism. Super bad.
I love Rod was just like, yeah, man, that's what I just did. And then Carah, John looks to Carah, you also denounce racism? You're against racism, right, Carah? And she's like, yeah, man, no shit. I've been proselytizing to this guy about Ibram X. Kennedy's anti-racism all fucking night. Anyway, that's all I had for today. Like I said, that was pretty much just a nail in a coffin for me. It broke my John Dehlin shelf. People only leave the ex-Mormon church because they want to be racist. I just wanted to show that insane chapter. If you want to see more of it, just go watch the interview, skip around through the channel or the chapters that have really condescending titles. Until then, remember to continue, hating the fact that you're a straight white male or straight white female. The Karens are actually, you guys are just about as shitty as we are now. So Welcome to the club, ladies.
It's like, I hate the fact that I'm a straight white male